Hello, everyone. This is Lenard Guzman here with Emily Robinson on the Modern Divorce podcast. Here, it's January 31st. On this recording, 2022. It is officially tax season, and I know Emily. There's probably things coming up with taxes and divorce. This is how we're gonna kind of streamline it because that's the time of year. What are you hearing? What's coming up? How's everything going with this? I know this season is particularly insane because you add COVID on top of it.
I know. Yeah. And now there's a new strain that's super contagious. I can't believe that we're like over 2 years into this now. But anyway, um, yeah. So right now, the biggest issue I think is this child tax credit. People have been getting checks for the child tax credit. I think it's $300 a child or so. And then in divorce, people are fighting about how do I split it? My ex isn't sharing it with me. Same thing as with the stimulus checks. And it also, I'm not a tax person, so I don't know exactly how it works, but it somehow is related to your child tax credit and getting the money in advance to try and help out during the pandemic instead of later when you file your taxes. So I'm sure that's going to open a whole nother can of worms when people are doing their taxes and getting tax refunds and owing taxes and then arguing about who was supposed to collect the child tax credit during the year. So that's probably the biggest issue we're seeing right now. That and the fact that it's hard to find accountants to like accountants that actually do people's taxes. It's hard to get their help at this time of year because they're so swamped with tax season. So, sometimes I have accountant questions and they're very busy, which is understandable.
Yeah, so I read something so the IRS put something out publicly that they're like, this is going to be a crazy tax season. This one in particular, the 2021, and they said if you call in the IRS, the ratio like for customer service is one IRS rep to 16,000 people in the queue, which is insane. Like those poor IRS customer service people.
Insane, but it does not surprise me. I mean, especially because everywhere staffing's very low with, COVID. People are out with COVID. We're having the same problem with the courts. Um, it's really hard to get, business as usual done.
So before we go on to the next topic, like as far as like you were saying, when you if you do get the child tax credit, which I think the IRS says they're delaying it, or there's something that has to be passed in the Senate that's delaying it. But in the case that you do receive it, or a parent does receive it, how does this like? What do you advise? Like, what's like? Is there a protocol? Like, if you want to just make everyone happy for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. It depends on the custody. If parents have like joint 50-50 custody or close to that, I advise that they split it. It actually would typically go, uh, in my opinion, to the person claiming the child on the taxes. So, which under IRS law is the parent with the primary custody. So if you have primary custody, then you should keep it because it's towards your own tax deduction. If you have joint custody, you'd be alternating which year you claim the children. So you would split it. And that's really the the guesses that we're doing. But again, none of this has been appealed, so we just have to guess.
Yeah, you could be the first like case to set the precedent. So okay,
It's
let's see.
interesting. There's a lot, so many things right now that I feel like precedent's gonna have to come out on, like, can the court order you to vaccinate your children? Can, which, I mean, in my opinion, the answer is no, because the court never tells you what to do with your children. Like the court can't tell you your children have to go to this school or that school. What they can do is pick the parent who gets to make the decision. So one parent wants vaccination, one parent doesn't. They'll pick which parent gets to make the decision, but the court can't make the decision because it's not their child. However, I have seen courts do it. So, I've seen courts say your child better get vaccinated. So, it'll be interesting to see what cases come out.
All right, so we're gonna end up, I think, coming back to this topic. So let's get into the part of the show where we go over trends we see in the divorce world, whether it's on Google with the the news topics. Sometimes we run into celebrity news, which I think we haven't run into a celebrity topic because it relates to ordinary people like us. So let's get to the first story. CNN. This one is the first one we see. How COVID is making divorce cases more complicated. So this has to do with COVID-19. COVID-19 is a daily reality of millions of divorce and divorcing parents across the country are struggling to navigate. Divorce lawyers say for many families, things are only getting more complicated. So issues like masks, remote schooling, and travel were already causing turmoil for divorced parents with different views on COVID safety. Now parents are increasingly sparring over vaccines too. Long dormant cases are back on attorneys' desks and sometimes landing back in a court. So here's the case. Denise, a mother of two boys who asked to be identified by her first name only to protect her children, ended up having to go back to court after she lost her job and landed a new one out of state. The issue would never have come up, she says, if COVID hadn't made her local job market in Michigan dry up, forcing her to cast a wider net in her job search. So at a time when she wanted to celebrate finding the work she needed to make up her family afloat financially, worry overwhelmed her. What if she couldn't make the move? I had this big knot in my stomach, and she's not alone. Divorce attorneys across the country told CNN the pandemic is having a major impact in their cases. So Patrick Bagdasarians has a formula he uses to describe how tough things are now for many of his divorce clients. So you take what you already know about the polarizing debates and panic parenting decisions of the pandemic, and then he says multiply that by 10, because the family law attorney in Pasadena, California, adds we're going through that situation with an ex-spouse or someone who you share a child with, who you're no longer involved with. Some people with strong views about the coronavirus safety can manage to avoid clashing with others who prefer a different approach, but many parents who share custody of children don't have that option. Going down, I'm trying to find something that we haven't kind of covered, but we're gonna end up covering it. But so one of these things, like we were talking about last year, a judge in Los Angeles ordered an unvaccinated father to either get vaccinated or provide a statement from a medical doctor explaining why he couldn't. So there's a lot of rulings that are coming out here. So this attorney, Bagdasarian, who represented the mother of the Los Angeles custody case, says his firm's Facebook page was flooded with comments, some slamming government overreach after the Los Angeles Times recently published a story about the judge's decision. He argued the judge was doing what was the best interest of the minor child. I assume this was what you were talking about, like how a judge, like there's no win. It's just only like catch-22. I mean, for the judge. So yeah, how does this work?
That's funny. I think I know that lawyer that you were quoting in Pasadena. Well, that's the thing I was talking about. Like the judges have to do what they think, is best for the children. It's always best interest of the children. The thing is, there's such a fine line between, putting your own judgment in, because judges are human too, and, protecting the child. So how does a judge make that call of what's best for someone else's child? Well, some judges may feel strongly that vaccinations are the best thing or aren't the best thing, and they have to somehow put their own judgment aside and try to look at what the best interest of the child is without their own views coming in. And that's really hard to do. I'm not sure I could do it. So I think that judge was trying to walk that fine line of, well, get vaccinated to, protect your child, or tell me a reason why you can't get vaccinated. I mean, to me, that's a better decision than forcing parents or children to get vaccinated, because I don't think that the court has the power to tell you to vaccinate your child. They can suggest it. They can choose the parent that wants to vaccinate to be the decision maker, but I don't think it's constitutional for them to be able to say, you better do this to a parent about anything, medical thing, or you know, school, any of that kind of stuff, because it's a parental decision.
Yeah, I think it's a to be continued topic. We're gonna probably end up coming back probably for the next year. It's gonna come up, and we'll continue this conversation. So let's get to the next topic. This is an interesting one. We always have a celebrity one. I noticed a social one, and then something with the courts, something like unprecedented in the last, few months.
Well, there's such a wide variety of divorce news.
So our next article comes from bestlifeonline.com. Best Life. It's like, it's just straight to the point. Okay. So this one's interesting because all the pictures on social media, so you could actually probably look into this. So if you spot this in old photos, you're 5 times more likely to divorce. So there's a study that found a surprising sign that you and your marriage won't last. Okay. So as much as we'd like to think that our marriages will last forever till death do us part, is far from guaranteed. In the US, the divorce rate is about 2.7 per 1,000 people, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, which is interesting because you'd think they're COVID experts, but okay. Right. But let's keep going here. Couples decide to part ways for a number of reasons, from lack of communication to infidelity and to financial issues. We know all this. But what's interesting is that so the research has found commonalities among divorced people, including some surprising predictors. In fact, one study found that one sign found in old photos could indicate that a person is 5 times more likely to divorce than others. Like in 2009, a study published in the Motivation and Emotion Journal found that the smile intensity in old photos can provide as a predictor of one's likelihood of divorce later in life. So for the test, the researchers recruited more than 300 psychology alumni and around 350 general alumni, rating smile intensity from college yearbook photos from 1 to 10. Researchers found that none of the people who fell within the top 10% of smile strength had gotten divorced, but in the bottom percent, 1 in 4 had experienced a divorce. So for the last test, the research recruited more than 50 individuals over the age of 55 and asked them to provide up to 8 photos of themselves between 5 and 22. So according to the study, 11% of those who were analyzed to be big smilers had been divorced, compared to 31% of those who frown in their old photos. Divorce can not only be predicted by photos taken in early childhood, but in divorce can not only be predicted by photos taken in early childhood, but early adulthood, but in childhood as well. The researchers wrote in the study. What do you think of this?
I mean, it's really interesting. I don't know if that's actually there's a correlation, I guess, but I don't know if that's actually causation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have no idea why that would be. There could be many other factors that play there, but these studies are always interesting to try to, predict things, but they're also always a little bit dangerous, because you don't want people to, worry, oh, my marriage is doomed because, people with red hair get divorced more often, or whatever studies show. So I think we have to remember that we're all unique, and we're all, individual, and we can't necessarily rely on these studies for, to predict our lives.
Yeah, I think people are gonna probably listen to this and look into their like old uh the camera roll and see. I mean, who knows? But I think it's funny because probably 10 or even, well, not 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you have to look into the album like they're saying in the research. So that was interesting to me. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
interesting how I mean, I got two photos. I got the iPhone, I got an iPad. So yeah, so it's interesting. It's like body language, right? Like it
Yeah.
indicates certain things. Okay, now let's go into the part of the podcast where we go over Ask Emily Anything. So people post who are in, the divorce journey, whether it's, getting started, whether they're at the end of their journey, because it doesn't really, if you have children, it doesn't really end, and things that come up. So our first one is a getting started one. This is kind of a happy one. We'll see. So there's a getting started. Well, I've officially moved out, and my birthday's in 15 minutes. So this person is alone now, but in a beautiful, cozy space. My in-laws helped me moved in and stayed for a while. They made me feel loved and still part of my family. Being around them made everything feel normal. I'm grateful for that. I thought I'd be more upset when they left. I've been crying so much lately. This isn't exactly how I pictured myself to be at 32, but the truth is I'm actually not feeling the anguish that's been plaguing me right now. Right now I'm in peace. So cheers and happy birthday to me. So did I read this right? In-laws. Is this like I know the in-laws thing could be kind of like awkward. I guess comes to mind. How does
Yeah.
like in the way in your experience, like how do the in-laws play in this, and what do you think of this, this story?
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be tricky. Actually, I've seen in-laws play into things in very different ways. Like sometimes they side with their own child, and um, hate the other person, and they pay for the divorce and they actually make it 10 times more nasty because they're funding it and pushing their child to, hate the other person. But I've also seen it where the in-laws side with the child that's not their child. And, for some reason they're angry at their own child. And they're, maybe their child had an affair, their child's had a drug addiction, and they end up siding with the other person. And then that makes it really interesting because then it's really ugly for their own child and causes a rift in that family. So, there's lots of different ways it can go, but I think anytime other people meddle in your divorce, I mean, I know families always do this and you need the family support and it's very important, but it almost always makes it worse because you have too many cooks in the kitchen and you have, you know, people pushing you to do things that your lawyer is advising you against, and it just makes it very complicated most of the time.
Yeah, it's always a package deal, even when you're not going through a divorce. Okay, the next one is separation versus divorce. So this person's in their in the part of their journey where they're getting started. So I'm considering separation, but I'm having difficulties with finances. We own a house together. Rent prices for a one-bedroom apartment are upwards of 1,600. I don't have any friends or family with available space these days. Is it worth selling the house for separation so we could both afford it? I'm not confident separation will bring us back together and will ultimately lead to divorce. You never know. I feel like the financial side of separation is the part that's holding me back from actually separating. It's something I think about daily since our marriage is suffering. I have no connection left with my wife. Drastic changes drastic change needs to happen so we can discover our true feelings again, decide what is best. But living together and trying to make it work isn't working right now. Any advice?
Well, look, that is true. It frequently is the financial side that makes it hard to separate because you can't, afford to have two separate households. Um, but you can still decide you're separating and, you know, live in different spaces in the same house. And, um, people shouldn't stay in an unhappy situation because of money. Maybe you can stay with a friend, maybe you can stay with relatives, but that is a big stressor for people. So that's where it could be really important to sit down, mediate, try to work it out instead of just fight.
See this next one here. Should you divorce your spouse if they are emotionally unavailable? So we've been together for 13 years and emotionally disconnected. And it just gets worse each year. He isn't concerned about my emotions or my mental needs. He actually gets mad when I talk about it. And even though I try to be there for him emotionally and mentally both because I care and hopefully to get the same in return, he instead responds with irritation and anger and abandons me in my time of need. He's so cold and hard. I need gentleness and warmth. He just refuses. I'm starting to feel like this isn't healthy for me. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Well, I can't say if you should or shouldn't. I mean, that's a personal choice. Everyone has to make that own choice. But if your needs aren't being met, that's a problem. And, I always suggest you start with therapy, talking to the person, try to go to therapy, try to go to some kind of counseling, see if there's anything that can be done to salvage the relationship. Um, and sometimes there's not, and you do need to divorce. But I certainly would try all those avenues first.
All right, here's a kind of fun one. Dating. This is a progress of some sort. I downloaded Hinge. I'm not familiar with these dates. I'm out of the game right now. So so Hinge is, I guess, a dating app. I was feeling a little carefree and I downloaded. I haven't opened the app yet, but at least I've downloaded. It might be another 6 months before I open it, but it's there. It's a way of telling myself that my life isn't over because I'm getting divorced. This person is in their 20s. Says I have a full life ahead of me and I'm feeling good about it. So like typically, I know everyone's different, but probably some people like maybe the next day after the divorce, they're kind of like on the app or preemptively. What do you think? Is like everyone varies, right?
Well, I think, with I think everybody's different and you're going to go, at your own pace as to what is right for you. And, some people are ready to date like the day after and some people aren't. And I think that there's no right or wrong, but I've had divorces where people they won't even go on a date until their divorce is finalized. And it might be like 5 years till their divorce gets finalized because it's ugly or whatever. And even though they're separated and the other person's dating, they will not go on a date. And then I have people who literally, the second they separate, are like, when can I get remarried? And they get remarried. They'll like just you'll bifurcate and get actually divorced and then you get remarried before your divorce is even finished, like, so the rest of your divorce. So yeah, and then people who are dating while they're still married, and it's all over the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't have an opinion either way. uh, okay. We're down to our last post here. It's getting started. Where I get started, I'm in need of some experienced advice here on how to start my divorce. My husband has been cheating on me with hundreds of women online, as far as I know, for over 4 years, plus financial and emotional abuse and extremely toxic narcissistic behavior. Surprised it took me so long. So we've been married 3.5 years. We live in California. It's a no-fault state, but looking to get out of this with myself intact. We have one child. primary breadwinner, only me on the deed to our house, no shared bank accounts or credit cards. What's the best plan of action? What's the first steps? I think I need a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first step's probably to have a consultation with a lawyer and to um, get your ducks in a row, figure out what it is that you need and don't need. And you don't necessarily have to hire a lawyer, but talk to somebody, get advice. That's usually the first step. A lot of lawyers do free consultations. You just have to know what your options are. And then, once you have those options, as far as hiring a lawyer, doing it yourself, having a mediator all in front of you, then you can make a educated decision.
All right, that's our last post of the day. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on the Modern Divorce Podcast. Bye-bye.